Is there proof that Jesus is God? And why would one want him to be God anyway? The insistence among many within Christianity is to make the Son of God God, and even portray him in the likeness of one race among the human family. I find that most interesting. But what proof is there that Jesus is God? Don't be fooled into believing that Satan's ministers, his agents, are spiritual beings. They are human beings. And the world today is saturated with them. They look the part, they play the part, they mention Jesus' name, they teach that Jesus is the Christ, that he's the Messiah. But as Jesus wrote at Matthew chapter 24, verse 5, that they will deceive many. And that has been occurring for a very long time, and it continues to occur, and it escalates. Each one, when I say each one, the many contending denominations, the persons within them, believe that what they are in is the truth. And so they fight and contend against the other guys, saying that they are false. I submit to you, suppose all of you are false, and that you have been duped into something, deceived into something, tricked into something that is not true at all. It only appears to be truthful. Like what's written at Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. We see a beast coming out of the earth. It looks like a lamb, has all the appearances of being lamb-like, that is Christ-like. But when it opened its mouth, when it spake as a dragon. Also, opinion is not proof that Jesus is God. Just saying that Jesus is God and that concludes the matter doesn't make Jesus God. The mindset among the many who believe that Jesus is God is quite something. Because God himself, our Creator, says that Jesus is his Son, his only begotten Son. And this is written at Matthew chapter 3, verse 17, and Luke chapter 9, verse 35. So what is it that has a hold of the masses to where they thumb their noses up at God? They give the middle finger to God, saying, no, he is not your son. He is God. Think about that. That is an act of disobedience. But many of these Christians, you can't tell them that. They don't want to believe it. They would rather call God a liar, and that is exactly what the serpent called God in the very beginning in the Garden of Eden. God told the man that in the day that he eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and bad, that he would die. Adam passed that information that God gave him to his wife. Eve wasn't around when God gave Adam that command. So Eve is having this conversation with the serpent, and the serpent tells her something similar, but different. That, oh no, you're not going to die. So the serpent slandered God. He called God a liar. He told the woman that God is afraid that you might become like him, knowing good and bad for yourself. And that is exactly what Christianity does. So who is Christianity like? Is it like the one true God, or does it resemble that serpent in the garden? And of course, you know that serpent today is Satan, the devil, and the dragon. So who is Christianity like? It is arrogant. It is complete disobedience to God when God himself says, this is my son. Listen to him. And then Christians teach and believe that no, your son is not God. He is God. And they use many words to make it so for themselves. Also, Jesus' closest companions. You would think if anyone knew who Jesus was, it would be those that he chose, the 12 apostles. And Jesus asked them a question at Matthew chapter 16, beginning at verse 15. Who do you say I am? And most of you know how Peter responded. Peter responded, you are the Son of the living God. And most of you know how Jesus responded to Peter's correct response. Blessed are you, Peter, son of Simon, because flesh and blood did not reveal that is, that truth to you, but my Father in heaven did. Even the devil, during Jesus' temptation in Matthew chapter 4, knew Jesus as the Son of God. This is found at Matthew chapter 4, verse 6. Read it for yourself. Even demons acknowledge that Jesus is the Son of God. And this can be found at Matthew chapter 8, beginning at verse 28 and 30. Jesus himself says at John chapter 20, verse 17, that he has a God and Father. Think about that. The one that many Christians claim they follow and who they make God himself says that he has a God and Father. If one goes to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3, the Apostle Paul teaches a hierarchy. He teaches that the head of the woman is man. The head of man is Christ. Does Christ have a head? Yes. The head of Christ is God. The Apostle Paul also identifies for us who the one God is at 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 6. He writes there that as for us, there's but one God. And he identifies that one God as the Father. Not the Son, but the Father. Then he goes on to say, and one Lord, spelled capital L, lowercase r-d, Jesus Christ. We have one God the Father, Jesus is God the Father, and one Lord. Lord means head. One can easily take 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3, and change the rendering of head to Lord. The Lord of the woman is man. The Lord of man is Christ. The Lord of Christ is God. It simply means headship, Lord, master. Eve's Lord, Eve's master, Eve's head was her husband Adam. The Apostle John wrote at John chapter 20, verse 31, that everything that he wrote down was so that they might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God. And that's exactly how it reads. So you Christians who believe that Jesus is God, is John lying too? John doesn't know what he's talking about? Why don't you guys address those scriptures? You have to take the truthful medicine. It is going to be painful, I know, but it's a good medicine for you. Don't be headstrong and push through what even God himself has said. This is my son. And you call God a liar, and you're being defiant, just like the serpent and the devil was defiant against things that God himself has said. At Ephesians chapter 4, we read that there is one Lord, one faith, and one baptism. Jesus said at John chapter 14, verse 28, the Father is greater than he is. If Jesus was truly God, he would know all things, would he not? Yet Jesus acknowledges at Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, that there are things that even he did not know. The angels don't know. That is concerning his return and when that would occur. But only the Father knows, not the Son, but only the Father knows. It seems what comes out of the mouth of many Christians are two things: Jesus being God and the Bible. The Father, the one true God, has been pushed into oblivion. It is almost as if he doesn't exist. And whose purpose does that serve? It serves the purpose of Satan the devil. When Jesus walked the earth, throughout his entire ministry, he spoke lovingly of his God and Father. Yet the many today who claim to follow him hardly even mention him. One can do a casual scrub on YouTube and look at some of the videos of these many air quote Christian YouTubers. They mention the Bible. They might mention Jesus, maybe, but they rarely, if ever, mention the Father. Something is wrong, people. Now, for those who believe that Jesus is God, I know that you guys use John 1:1 as proof text. I wonder why many of you don't look at John 1:1 in the Greek. It is most telling. There are two instances of God in John 1:1. If you look at those two instances in the Greek, you'll find that they are two different Greek words. The first instance of God has the definite article the in front of it. The second instance of God in John 1:1 does not have the definite article the. And also, if you look at the first part of John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. What does that tell you? That the Word was with someone. That implies two entities, two persons. The Word, God's only begotten Son in Christ Jesus, was with God in the beginning. He was with him. Not that he's God. And then the second part, that many of those who believe that Jesus is God, that's what they cling to. And the Word was God. That's incorrect. That's a translator's bias. Because if you pair the first part of John 1:1 with the second part, now you have a contradiction. Because now you have the Word being with God and the Word was God. That's a contradiction. But if you look at John 1:1 in the Greek, keep in mind that the second instance of God in John 1:1 doesn't have the definite article the in front of it. Now it makes sense. It would read, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with the God, the one God. And the Word was a God-like one, God-like. Even the angels, the other sons of God, are God-like ones. That very same Greek word for God, that second instance in John 1:1, can be found 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. There it references Satan being the God of this world. Same Greek word. However, it is a very difficult thing to get Christians who believe that Jesus is God to look at that and to even believe it. Staying in John chapter 1 and going down to verse 18, no one or no man, depending on the Bible translation, has seen God at any time. Yet people have seen Jesus. The one the world knows as Jesus Christ, the Hamashiach, the Messiah, had a beginning. God had no beginning. Who created God? Christ Jesus had a beginning, and this can be found at Colossians chapter 1, verse 15, where we're told there that he is the image of the invisible God. Jesus wasn't invisible. The firstborn of creation. The first entity that God created was the one that the world knows as Jesus the Christ. That was his name in heaven. And if one goes to Revelation chapter 3, verse 14, we read the same thing. That Jesus had a beginning. He was created. So I would say to these Christians who believe that Jesus is God, you don't have any proof. You only have opinion. You have something that you want to believe, yet you will not address these scriptures that I mentioned in this video, and there are many more. You bypass those in preference to what you want to believe, and you teach that to others, and you become offended. Some of you, I know this already, you become offended if they raise these other scriptures and they question you. Don't allow them to do that. God gave you, the individual, a brain. He gave you gray matter. Use it. Don't surrender that to other persons who seek to control you and tell you what to believe. Put those persons who teach that Jesus is God to the test, and all you have to do is use these scriptures that I mentioned in this video, and I'll leave them listed in the description of this video. Put them to the test and do not let them deflect and go over here and go over there. Bring them back. Have them reconcile their belief that Jesus is God with these scriptures. And ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, if God says that Jesus is his son, end of discussion. End of discussion. There's nothing no human being can say to convince me that Jesus is God when God himself says Jesus is his son. I am not going to join you in calling God a liar. Let God be true and every man or every human being a liar. This is R. Jerome Harris, the disciple. Thank you for listening.